This is a meeting of the Conservation Commission, September 23rd, meeting via Zoom, and we will be proceeding typical fashion of how we're going to conduct the meeting. As the process goes on, I'll open the hearings. We'll have a presentation from the applicant. The Conservation Commission will then make comments as appropriate. We'll then open it up to the audience. You'll have to let us know that you want to speak, and then we'll either close or continue the hearing. For the Summer Street, 55 Summer Street project, we're going to do a little differently. We're going to, after we open the hearing, we'll get the members from the applicant's team that are present. They'll then have a presentation by Beta, which did the peer review. That's Marty Nover and Chris Turgeon is who we expect. We'll have then a response by the applicant, review by the commission, and then we'll open it to the audience. So we can proceed now. I don't have the announcements to read in, Landis, so you have that?
Yep, I can read it in.
Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to add to how we're going to do the meeting?
No, that sounded good. Sorry, I just want to make sure there wasn't anyone else that, I apologize to everyone. I put the wrong Zoom information on the agenda I sent out. So I was just sort of trying to backtrack to make sure everyone who had asked me had gotten it. So just make sure there's no one.
You need a minute to check that?
No, that's okay. I looked. Just if I get distracted, that's what I'm doing. So. Just patience, everybody. Okay, are you ready to start, Jack?
Yeah, you can do the first hearing, which
Town
is
of Walpole request for determination of applicability, Conservation Commission public hearing. In accordance, the Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw notice is hereby given of the intent of Keolis Commuter Service for review of wetlands maps along the railroad right-of-way for their 5-year vegetative management plan. Plans are on file at the Conservation Commission office. The public hearing on the above matter will be held during a virtually accessible video Zoom meeting on September 23rd, beginning at 7 p.m. All interested parties are requested to be present. John Wiley, Chairman.
Okay. Representing the applicant?
Yes, good evening. For the record, I'm sorry, is this being recorded, Landis?
It's
Yes.
Being recorded, yes.
Okay. So for the record, this is Clary Kutu. I'm Director of Environmental Compliance for Keolis Commuter Services. We're presenting to you the request for determination of applicability for the resource area maps within your jurisdiction. And with me tonight is Matt Donovan from FDCE. He will be presenting and discussing the maps for you. Just a kind reminder that what the intent of the RDA tonight is to review the resource areas and for your commission to determine if the resource areas as delineated within these maps actually represent accurately what you believe to be the wetlands in your jurisdiction. That being said, Matt is, I can see him. I think he's muted, but I don't know if he can share his screen, Landis, or how.
Yeah, yes, he can. He can.
Okay.
All right, so Everyone should be able to see my screen, and I just wanted to start by showing you our vegetation management website.
I'm sorry, just once again, what was your name?
Yeah, sorry. This is Matt Donovan from FTC Engineers representing Keolis.
Okay, thank you.
And this is our vegetation management website that we update as needed. It's a handy tool for any of you who want to stay updated on our vegetation management activities. We do send the updates via certified mail as required, but for a lot of people, this is easier to stay updated. It includes our vegetation management plan, our yearly operational plan, and the maps that we've provided you with for review. So the RDA that we submitted to your commission is required by CMR 11 and specific sections of CMR 10, which require us to submit the delineated maps to confirm the boundaries of the resource areas are accurate. The requirements are part of the 5-year vegetation management plan, which is designed to manage and control the vegetation necessary to keep the public and the railroad safe. As the plan is executed, great measures are taken to keep the sensitive areas protected, and the sensitive area restrictions are listed and described in detail in CMR 11.04, as well as section 8 of our vegetation management plan.
Can you hold on a minute, Matt?
Yeah.
I've lost video. I need the meeting ID, Landis. I have the meeting ID from the other meeting.
Okay. Hold on a second.
The pass code or
I just need to find it. You need the meeting ID,
yes.
956 83 81 1564.
Sounds like too many digits.
Do you need the passcode?
Yeah, the passcode, what I want.
344388.
Start over again.
344388.
Let's see if that works.
Or Jap just needs to go out and come back in or something.
Yeah, when Matt came on, I got
But just
out.
click the link. Completely go out and then come back in with the link that Landis gave us most recently.
did. All right, let's start over again. Let's see. Okay, I've got the map up now. Go ahead.
All right, so the vegetation management plan is regulated on all levels from federal to state to municipal. And as part of it, the 5-year management plan, vegetation management plan, your commission, the Board of Health, the Board of Selectmen, and the Department of Agricultural Resources is supplied annually with a yearly operational plan consistent with the 5-year plan, but it will go into a little more detail of the vegetation management activities for each year throughout the 5-year program. The vegetation management plan includes an integrated vegetation management approach where chemical application as well as physical and mechanical methods are used to combat the vegetation. Best management practices are used throughout this plan in an effort to limit the chemical application, which has been an objective of Keolis. The maps that we provided you with are mainly made for the chemical portion of the plan. They were made with USGIS and MassGIS layers to determine the boundaries of the sensitive and protected areas. And we also get a list of all private wells along the right-of-way from the Department of Agricultural Resources. The maps don't often change based on the wetlands not changing, but we do update them as necessary to account for any changes. And I can confirm to you that these maps have not changed since the last time your commission has approved them. So on the maps, you can see that there are areas that are depicted as limited spray zones and no spray zones based on the yellow and the blue colors. In the field, on the railroad tracks themselves, They're marked with the same color-coded system shown on the maps, and the markings in the field correspond to all these locations that you see on the maps. As a spray truck applicator performs the application, who is, I should mention, he's certified and licensed to do the work in the state of Massachusetts. He is accompanied with an environmental monitor who is a direct employee of Keolis's environmental team, who is instructing and the operator as necessary as they go down the tracks. And they will always have these maps in the truck as they perform this application. So most importantly, the yellow zones you see will never receive any form of herbicide outside of the track structure itself, which is federally required to keep free of vegetation. And that is just on the track bed, road bed. In the blue zones, they, outside of the track structure itself, is really only sprayed on an as needed basis. And most importantly, it's never sprayed more than the year, whatever the interval is, whether it's 1 or 2 year, depending on if it's a light blue or dark blue zone. And the conditions, these areas outside of the track can't be sprayed unless if the conditions call for it too. Like if it's wet in these areas, they won't be sprayed. The chemicals that are used for this work all come from the Department of Agricultural Resources approved sensitive area material list, which can be found on their website with all the details, as well as our vegetation management plan. So that's the process of the work that happens on an annual basis. And I can open the floor up to you if you guys have any questions.
Okay, Landis?
I don't have any questions because like what was presented, it's pretty much the same maps every 5 years that come through. The wetlands haven't really changed.
Okay. Bailey?
I'm going to abstain since I wasn't at the previous one.
Okay, well, previous hearing would have been 5 years ago, so.
Oh,
Okay, yeah.
sounded like it was more recent than that.
No, you don't have to abstain.
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. Doug?
I'm just curious, is Roundup one of the approved chemicals?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Medio?
No questions.
Betsy?
No questions.
And I don't have any questions. So anybody in the audience would like to comment? Is there anyone there showing up, Landis?
I don't see any. If you have a question, please speak up.
Hearing anyone from the audience? Okay. Someone make a motion to close the hearing?
I'll move that.
I'll
We have a
second.
Okay, Medio second. Okay. All in favor, Bailey?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Medio?
Aye.
Betsy?
Aye.
Jack? Aye. Okay, hearing's closed. So Landis, what are we giving a -3 and a -5? Is that the recommendation?
But yes, that's what's been requested.
That's okay. Okay, then someone make a motion for a -3 and a -5.
I'll move it.
Second that.
That was a Medio?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, all in favor, Bailey?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Medio?
Aye.
Betsy?
Aye.
Jack? Aye. Okay, so we're all set on that. Thank you.
Thank you all.
for
Have
your
a good night.
presentation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. We're after 7:15, okay. So can you read in the 55 Summer Street, Landis?
Sure can. Town of Walpole Conservation Commission Notice of Intent Public Hearing in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act. Notice is hereby given of the intent of 55 BH LLC / 55 SSLLC for the construction of 300 residential units in a mixture townhouse, single-family home, and apartment structures with associated grading, utilities, and drainage, a portion of which is within the outer riparian zone of Cedar Swamp Brook, the 100-foot BVW, and 3 on-site vernal pools located at 55 Summer Street, map 308, block 52, lot 56 and 60, and a portion of 307-52-78. Plans on file at the Conservation Office and online and on the town website. The public hearing on the above matter will be held via Zoom conference on continued to September 23rd at 7:15.
Okay, thank you. And who do we have on the applicants team? Can you identify each member? So we have that for our record.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is Joanna Giorgio Hilbert from Mackey and Mackey on behalf of the applicant. With us here tonight, we have David Hale, Leslie French, Mark Brooks, Brian Butler, and Patrick Bogle.
Okay, thank you. Landis, did you get everybody's name?
I'm getting there.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a point of clarification about the structure of the hearing tonight?
Go ahead.
So you mentioned that Beta would go first and present their comments. Would they be running through their entire comment document, or will it be they present a comment, we present a response? Which way would you like to hear it?
Yeah, this is a good question. I our thought was that we would have Beta make the presentation on their comments, and then your comments would follow from whoever you choose to use to do that. Marty, we have for Beta, we have Marty Nover, and I think we have Chris Turgeon on also.
That's right, Mr. Chair. We have Chris Turgeon and also Julia Stearns is on.
Okay. All right. Did you get that, Landis? We have.
Yep.
Okay. Marty, what is your thought on as far as the presentation goes? We talked about it before was that you would make your presentation. Is that the way you still think we should proceed?
Well, that's right, Mr. Chair. Just to remind everyone, I guess, is that we haven't had an opportunity to review the recent submittal by the applicant. So, you know, the thought process was that, you know, once we present our findings, they would have an opportunity to present their revised plans to the commission in response to our comments. You know, we really aren't prepared to, you know, have a discussion about each and every one of their responses to our comments yet. So I don't know if that would be a productive discussion or not.
Okay, yeah, I think we'll proceed in that the way we were planning to. You'll make your presentation. And yes, I don't think anybody's had, the commission or you have had time to review the latest submission that they made with the changes. But go ahead. So go ahead and proceed then.
Okay, okay.
And can I just go through that list one more time to make sure I got everyone's name? David Hale, Joanna Hilvert, Leslie French, Brian Butler, David Bogle, and
Mark Brooks.
Mark Brooks. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
It's Patrick Bogle.
Patrick Bogle, yeah.
Patrick, sorry. Gotcha, Patrick. All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair. For some reason, I don't have the August 10th letter open. I'm wondering if maybe Chris or Julia could put it up on their screen and I can go through it that way. But as you know, the Conservation Commission hired the Beta Group to peer review the, I think it was the May submittal for this development project. Our August 10th comment letter goes through our initial findings of reviewing of the initial submission with respect to both the performance standards under the Wetlands Protection Act and also under the bylaw. It's our understanding at this time that the ZBA hasn't waived the local wetlands protection bylaw. Part of our review, Julia Stern and Caitlin Nover went out to the site during the summer and did the initial site inspection. They reviewed the BBW boundary, the mean annual high water boundary to Cedar Swamp Brook. They took a look at the wetland crossings as well as the vernal pools on the site. So they basically crisscrossed the site and got a good look at it in preparation of our comments. I'm going to go through the wetlands resource area comments, performance standard comments, and Chris is going to go through our stormwater comments. We were hired to take a look at the peer reviewers' stormwater comments and just confirming that the project meets the stormwater standards. So anyways, first and foremost, the site is, it's made up of pretty intact wetland system, riverfront area, vernal pools, and one large basically upland area that based on the current plans that we reviewed, much of which will be clear cut for the development. So our first comment that we had.
Hey, Marty, just
Yes.
what page do your comments start on?
It starts on page 4. 5. Well, it says 5 of 4, which is not right. No, that's not the right comment letter. That's okay. Applicant's response.
That's your letter with their
okay, that includes the applicant's response. Okay.
So we should start on page 5.
Yep.
Those are still stormwater.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, right there. So you can keep scrolling down to the next page. Okay, so our first wetland comment was, we took a look at each of the 3 vernal pools on the property. In vernal pool number 3, we determined that the actual boundary of that vernal pool needed to be enlarged to incorporate an obvious area that there's persistent standing water, and to us, it appears that it was vernal pool habitat. So, and in the current plans, I'm not going to get into it, but the current plans do enlarge that vernal pool area. So our next comment. Comment number 2, the project should provide more undisturbed upland areas contiguous to the vernal pools to protect vernal pools 1, 2, and 3. Development of the upland buffers between the vernal pool complex will eliminate safe migration of vernal pool species between pools. So basically, much of the, as I mentioned, much of the upland buffer will be clear cut and developed, which will really eliminate the connectivity between the 3 vernal pools. As a matter of fact, I think it's vernal pool number 2 will be completely cut off from the wetland system and the 2 vernal pools, remaining vernal pools. So that's one of the significant comments that we have with this particular development is the amount of upland buffer that will be clear cut and developed. So wetland comment 3, the applicant should provide additional assessment how the proposed impacts to habitat meets the applicable performance criteria and adequately protects the vernal pool upland habitats, as well as capacity of the riverfront area to provide important wildlife habitat functions in the locations of the proposed alterations. So again, we feel that the applicant should provide the commission with additional information, basically supporting their current design, how their current design can be constructed and developed so that it won't have an impact to those vernal pools and the vernal pool habitats, as well as the riverfront area that's proposed to be altered for the 3 stormwater basins. So, so it's important to take a look at existing habitat that's out there and what impacts this project will have on those particular habitats and the functions and values that it provides. Wetland comment 4, that wildlife habitat evaluation provided with the NOI should provide more assessment of the overall cognitivity of the wetland and vernal pool systems to the Cedar Swamp Brook. Upon site development, the wetland systems will be the only migration pathway from Vernal Pool 1 to the riverfront area and river system. And then the Vernal Pool 2 will be completely cut off. So again, once this site is fully developed, the only remaining ability for wildlife to move through the site safely is through this vernal wetland system that does start at the eastern part of the site, and then it travels through the site, through those 2 proposed crossings, and then down to the river. So, and the next 5. The wetland restoration plan developed in accordance with the Mass Inland Wetlands Replication Guidelines and checklist should be provided. Restoration area details such as existing and proposed contours and cross sections should be provided with a site plan. Like when we took a look at the proposed wetland replication areas, the plans were not really detailed enough to I guess, evaluate what was going to happen once these areas were clear cut and graded, and whether or not that they'd be a functioning wetland upon completion. So the plans really need to be more detailed with the mitigation. Comment 6, given the amount of impacts and loss of upland habitat resulting from the project, the applicant should provide wetland restoration at 2-to-1 ratio or provide greater buffer zone protection. Again, this project has the opportunity to provide much more mitigation. We're not suggesting that 2-to-1 mitigation is the way to go, especially since it would require a clear cutting valuable upland buffer, and there's not a lot of upland buffer left. So perhaps the better way to go would be to provide greater buffer zone protection, especially around the 3 vernal pools, especially vernal pool 1 and 2. So comment 7, the wetland restoration plan should include a designated minimum 25-foot no disturb zone of native vegetation, and the area should be indicated on the plans. So what that means is around these restoration areas, replication areas, there should be some buffer zone to protect those replication areas, which in the future hopefully will actually become wetland. Comment 9, an invasive species control plan should be included in the NOI application. This site is especially the southwest site, is full of invasive species. There should be a robust invasive species plan developed for this development that includes, handling of the invasives during clearing, as well as, the prevention of the spread of invasives into the restored buffer zone areas, any areas that are cleared and planted for your mitigation areas. There really needs to be a well thought out site-specific invasive species plans for this project. Number 10. Thank you, Landis. The applicant, go down a little. Okay, the applicant should provide the commission with a specific graphic that illustrates both current and proposed watersheds to the on-site resource areas and describe the changes in groundwater recharge within 100 feet of the boundaries of the resource areas, including the vernal pools. So, pre and post watersheds are different. So the applicant should really provide the commission with assurance that the handling of the stormwater won't have an adverse impact on, say, the hydro period of the vernal pools, the contribution of water to the I guess the isolated wetland in the middle of the development, and just the wetlands in general. So they really need to provide the commission with a description and understanding of what's going to happen with the groundwater and an overland flow once this project is constructed. Scroll down. Are you doing the scrolling, Landis?
No, I'm not actually.
Oh, who is that? I don't even know who's doing it.
It must be Julie or.
Who's doing it? Thank you.
It's Chris.
Okay.
Chris is, okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's it.
And I guess that's it.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, I think that the common thread here is significant alteration of the buffer zones surrounding these, vegetated wetlands and vernal pools, as well as, the impacts to the resource areas that are proposed, including the riverfront area. The regulations do allow stormwater basins to be placed in riverfront areas as long as there's no alternatives available to them to place these stormwater basins outside the riverfront. And, during our on-site this past Saturday, I think the commission saw that this particular part of the site where the riverfront is the undisturbed portion of the site. It's got very mature, evergreen forest, so the commission should really consider hard allowing these stormwater basins in the riverfront area in these locations, and require that the applicant provide solid evidence that they have no other alternative to placing those basins in the riverfront area. And I think that's a summary of our comments. And Chris, if you want to go through our stormwater.
Sure, thank you.
Comments.
Thanks, Marty. Beta only had, Beta feels that the applicant had satisfied all the comments, either with the response of to be determined or with explanation or point of clarification. There were two items, two comments that, excuse me? Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got some background noise here. Two comments that Beta would like some additional clarification on is stormwater comment 3. The applicant is using infiltration rate A, soil-based soil based on soil test data taken throughout the site, and yet is using C, B, and D soils in the hydrologic model. If soils data indicate A soils, revise pre and post development hydrocarbon models, modeling all upland soils at A soils. I'm not, the response, I don't, the response shown here, I'm not sure if the applicant understood what we were asking. But for our clarification, we note that the NRCS map that the applicant used shows mostly C and D soils throughout the site. But their test, the parent material of their test data shows more of A or B type soils. And in their hydrologic model, they're using D type soils. We would like them to look at the model again and rethink if they should be using what they actually found in the soil logs, the parent material being more of an A or B type soil. And our second comment.
Well, Chris, can I just interject there?
Yep.
I'm not sure well, maybe the commission does understand the implications of using the C and D soil versus the A soil. When,
You explain that, please?
Yep, I can explain that.
Yeah, okay. I think it's important that they understand, the implications of what that means.
Yep, absolutely. So basically, their hydrologic model is using a C and D soil, which basically means that during a rain event, there's going to be a high amount of runoff from the site with low infiltration. However, they provided soil logs throughout the site that show that the parent material of the underlying soil is mostly A and B soil, which would allow for less runoff and more infiltration. That being said, the stormwater standard has to meet pre and post development runoff post development runoff has to be less than pre-development runoff. And because of the way it's modeled, it's actually showing the pre-development is actually showing more runoff than there actually is out there.
So what that means is they have to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but what that means is they have to control and manage and treat less runoff under post conditions. Correct?
That actually means that if less is actually being run off, they have to either meet that in post development or be less than that.
Okay. I'm still not clear on this. The present condition is the soil is actually C and D or A and B?
So the NRCS map shows that the current site is mostly B, C, and D soils, and that's what they're using in the hydrologic model. However, the NRCS map, which is the National Soil Conservation Service map, we use that, industry standards would use that in absence of actual soil data. However, they went out and the applicant went out and got soil data to show it's more of an A or B soil type.
What's actually there is A or B as opposed to B, C, and D.
Correct.
Okay.
We're recommending that they pick one and not we recommend they pick what's actually out there for their hydrologic model instead of what's on the NRCS maps.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
So, excuse me. The second comment that we had was, I'm sorry, I lost my place here. Oh, I lost my place. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Stormwater comment 5. Due to the reliance on infiltration to provide mitigation for stormwater impacts, and the fact that the design does not allow for flexibility due to density, if infiltration rates do not match assumed rates, as well as a difference in assumed hydrologic soil ratings of soil from NRCS mapping, Beta recommends the applicant provide 2 in situ saturated conductivity tests for each of the proposed basins to confirm the design. Beta still recommends to the commission that the applicant provide in situ saturated conductivity tests. And the reason is because the NRCS map and what was actually discovered in the soil logs are completely different. And since this site relies heavily on these 2 infiltration basins, it is still recommended that Beta recommends to the commission that the applicant provide these in situ tests. And as for the rest of the stormwater comments, we are Beta satisfied with their responses.
Okay, so that's, do we either of you have any additional comments at this point? Okay, so we'll get to the applicant, and whoever's going to speak, just identify who you are and what, if you change speakers, so we know what who it is. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Joanna Hilvert. I'm just going to briefly kick this off, and then I'll turn it over to the engineers. So I think our approach tonight, as you referenced earlier, and as Marta referenced as well, we have submitted a revised plan in response to Beta's comments. So our plan tonight is to present that revised plan and then to run through our comment responses, which in large part will refer to the plan. Just again, another procedural question. Once we've run through the responses and had some discussion on that tonight, you know, historically, you've authorized us to meet with the conservation agent, and if there's a peer reviewer, with the peer reviewer to sort of reconcile their comments and our responses and come back to the commission with that reconciliation. Is that the intention for this hearing as well?
Landis, you want to comment on that?
Landis, I think you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now? I think that we should do that at some point. I'm not sure if it's the best time to just schedule it right now. So right. So there was some just sort of general plans that were submitted. So I think we should just continue with our discussion and then decide afterwards. I mean, you're still not very far in the zoning board of appeals process either, and that's sort of contingent upon us too. There shouldn't be 2 different plans.
So, and that's pretty typical that with any project development, there's usually 2 consecutive hearings, one with the conservation and one with another board, either the planning board or the zoning board or both. So our intention would be to close this out, you know, regardless of what happens with the other open hearing, and proceed accordingly.
I'm not sure if you can. My understanding is you can't close the hearing with conservation until you have a determination with the zoning board.
So we can, I'm not sure I agree with that, but I feel like we're sort of getting off track here. I guess my question was really just, we're going to present tonight our responses to the Beta's comments. I presume we'll have some discussion, but I just wanted to clarify that after this hearing, and I agree we don't have to set a date tonight, that once the presentation has occurred, we can meet with Landis and Beta to review some reconciliation of the comments.
And my recommendation to the commission would be when we get kind of closer to a more final plan.
Okay, so why don't we just proceed with the, with your response, with the applicant's response?
Sure, but we can't get closer to a final plan until we've reconciled our comments. So is the thought to do that tonight or to meet afterwards so that we can get closer to a final plan?
I don't think we're going to resolve it tonight. So go ahead with your response.
Could we share? Okay, I guess we are sharing.
Yes.
And this is Brian Butler for the record, Oxbow Associates. Leslie has put up our revised plan for presentation, which we can do a summary response to the Beta comments, just very briefly and without a point-by-point methodology. And essentially, I guess I'll ask, is my cursor is not showing here, right? No. Maybe I'll ask Leslie to just follow the bouncing ball and point to the features as I go through them. Leslie, great. Can everybody see Leslie's cursor?
Yeah.
Okay, great. If we go to, I guess, start at the bottom of the page, Leslie, just down by the single families. In that area, and this is just a course overview of some of the responses that have been made, or the revisions made in response to the Beta commentary. Down in this single family pod, the two cul-de-sacs there that are all single family homes. The stormwater, we've taken one of those single family units has been removed from the design, and the stormwater has been pushed more upland, if you will, and further away from the riverfront area in that area to accommodate, again, a reduction in riverfront area impacts. If we move northwest, or well, I'm not actually, to the, it'll be to the northeast, I guess, here, Leslie, yeah, I think you're there, yep. Can everyone see that cursor moving around there? Or is it a little, great.
Would it be possible to zoom in just a tiny bit?
Sure, could you, great, Leslie, thank you. Thank you. That red cloud that's between units 17 and 16 here, as indicated on road D, 2 units have been removed there as well to accommodate stormwater displaced from other areas. If we go toward the railroad tracks, Leslie, all the way, keep going. And these are changes relative to wetland resource areas. There's significant changes in the lay of the project, and Patrick may weigh in afterwards just to fill in the details. Previously, where Leslie's pointing now, we have vernal pools ostensibly 1 and 2, 1 to everyone's left and 2 to the right. The one on the left is wetland E in our scheme. That's an isolated wetland, isolated vegetated wetland. To the right is wetland vernal pool 2 or wetland A under our delineation scheme. In between that, formerly we had residential housing in there, and we've retracted that to maintain the connectivity between pools 2 and 3, which actually will be confluent with 1 and 2 rather, with pool 3 all the way over, to the east there, or to the south in this case, I'm sorry. Because that wetland will be kept intact, and there'll be a patent passage beneath there. So there'll be a maintenance of conductivity there, or connectivity. Additionally, we've retracted the stormwater over toward the riverfront area in 2 areas. Oops. We've had a reduction of both of the basins. There we go. Thanks, Leslie. Where Leslie's pointing now, and the other one that's to the east or to the higher up on the page. Yeah. Actually further Sorry, Leslie. Nope, closer to building 2. There we go. Oh, we're right at the elbow of the road, Leslie. That's other basin. Yeah, we've reduced, both of those basins have been retracted so that there's less impact in the riverfront area as has been discussed. Patrick, is there other features that I'm of note that should be brought up while we're looking at the big picture view?
Yeah, just a couple of small things that I'll add in. So I'll add a couple of stamps here. Let me know if you guys can see. You have unit 20 here, which I added some stamps to. There was a building adjacent to it right here, which we've removed, and that helped shift this infiltration basin number 4 to the southeast, which moved it out of the riverfront area by about 30 or so feet. Similarly, to the north, we have basin number 3, which is this guy. I'll kind of run along the outline here, which shows the limit of the revised basin. And that kind of comes and outlines around here. And that has been moved and shifted with the realignment of this road and the realigned multifamily layout here. And that was primarily to shift the stormwater out of the riverfront and reduce those impacts. Additionally, back to Brian's point here, we had this area, which increased the stormwater in here. We were also able to shift some of the stormwater away from these houses and maintain at least 20 feet, where before we were a little closer. And in the area down here, Leslie, I don't know if you can kind of shift that just back down a little bit.
Patrick, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
That basin you were just touching upon, what number is that? One of the problems I was having was your basins are not numbered on this overall plan. So when I was looking at the details, I couldn't, it was taking too much eye strain to try and figure out which one was which.
I apologize. Yeah, on the full 5-1 plan set, every basin is labeled. So I'll go in order right now. From the top, the northeastern section here, this is basin 1. In the center, you have basin 2. Over here, you have basin 3. This is revised basin 4. And then this is basin 5.
Okay, thanks.
And only basins, basins 2, 3, 4, I guess only basins 1 haven't been revised here. Basins 2, 3 and 4 and 5 were shifted out of the riverfront, whereas 2 was mainly just to add additional area to reduce some of the impacts on some of the surrounding buildings. We also might be able to shift some of the grading to pull some of the additional water from where infiltration pond was receiving some of that runoff water too. Additionally, up near the 2 vernal pools, we have Vernal Pool 1 here and Vernal Pool 2, as Brian was mentioning. We removed this jut out of road, which had a townhouse on the southern section. And we did that purely just to maintain the connectivity between this corridor here, between all the 3 vernal pool sections. They'll be able to get crossing under this, which meets the stream crossing standards. And then you have these 2 vernal pools, which will have the passageway now through here. We did that by just realigning some of these townhouses and eliminating this 6-unit townhouse, which was kind of a mirror of the one that's over here. And that was purely just to address Marta's comments in her letter there. And so pretty much that's generally what we did here. The multifamily changed because of these two infiltration ponds. And we also did it to kind of maintain a slightly better flow through here. And also, like I mentioned, that connectivity between the two vernal pool areas. So I don't know if Brian has any additional items he'd like to add there.
Yeah, while we're on the big screen, so to speak here, thanks, Patrick. Just make mention that let me see if I can do the annotation stamp here, or actually do a drawing. Let's see if this is going to work. Just in the field, we looked at the original Vernal Pool 3. Can everyone see my pencil here? Over in the near the Vernal Pool in the southerly part of the site? Maybe not.
Not yet.
Oh, now can you see me drawing? No.
Where are you?
I'm drawing on the right side of the screen in red.
No, I don't see anything. Maybe try the stamp option. Oh, I see it now.
Oh, you see it? Maybe there's a lag. Well, anyway, the vernal pool is shown as indicated here in these light lines, and we expanded that with field flags that were located so it more approximates something like this. So it's probably about a 2-acre limitation, or perhaps somewhat larger. Actually, it actually goes to the property line here. So we brought it all the way out to the stone wall here and ended it. So even though the primary functional area of vernal pool remains the same, that's where there's the most sunshine insulation, if you will. That's where there's the most water depth and persistent water, and where we found all the egg masses this spring. We basically took a confluent flooding zone where the water might be 2 to 6 inches or slightly greater in places through the pit and mound kind of topography of the maple swamp, and we just included that as it's really of no consequence to us. So we just kind of lumped that in a fairly generous manner. So that's the other aspect that was also viewed in the field on last Saturday, 4 days ago, the commission members. Other than that, I don't think, I think we can go through the kind of systematically go through the kind of call and response exercise if everybody agrees.
So this is David Hale.
Hi, David.
And I'm the proponent. And I'd just like to make a comment about the overall plan relative to the alternatives analysis and the use of the riverfront as detention. I think if you were familiar with the previous plan, there were 4 multifamily buildings that were 4-story, and we essentially consolidated those 4 buildings into 2. So one is essentially a combination of 2 buildings in an L form, and we went to a 5-story structure, and we did that really as an alternative to the original plan that was proposed. We took the peer review comments seriously and worked hard to reduce the footprint of the plan so we could create extra space outside the riverfront for detention. And by reducing the footprint, we also reduce the amount of water that needs to be detained. And so in order to go beyond that, at this point, we would be diminishing the purpose of the project, which is to provide affordable housing and market housing. And we would have to reduce that. So we've made a good attempt. The cost of 5-story construction is higher because it's a different you're dealing with a different fire code that's more expensive to build. But there are some savings as well, and this plan works, and this is our plan. So that's all I have to say.
And just David, one more kind of footnote here with regard to the change of the amended layout is that we currently have impacts exclusive to stormwater exclusively in the outer riparian zone, the 100 to 200 foot zone, and the totality of it in the worst case scenario, which is likely to be reduced slightly on final design, is 8.8% impact, so which is below the 10% threshold that's specified in the act. Although again, the value of the impacts attributable to stormwater or on-site sewage disposal or a few other items is not tabulated in the impact assessment for Riverfront area. But regardless of how you split it or how you view it, we're now at below 10% threshold, so the 91.2% at least of the Riverfront area will remain intact at the conclusion of this.
Okay, anything else?
We can go through the responses. We can kind of paraphrase our responses on the I don't know, I guess maintaining this up I think is adequate. We may want to put up the beta letter with our annotations on it. Leslie, if you could have that on board, as a backup. But I've got enough notes here, I think, from Marty's discussion earlier that I think we can at least jump through these, and then Patrick could.
I could probably start with the stormwater, since there's only two I need to address.
Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
I'm sorry, Patrick, before you get to that, just two quick overriding points. One is that you'll see throughout when questions of the bylaw have been brought up, we've noted just to remind the commission that because this is a 40B project and we've requested a waiver of the bylaw, that will be addressed by the ZBA. And so questions, comments specific to the bylaw are non-scope for the peer review, as they are not within the jurisdiction of the board for this hearing process. And then the second point is on the stormwater issues, just to point out also that the peer review hired by ZBA was Tetra Tech to review stormwater issues, which we did discuss at the beginning of this peer review process, that we were going to try to avoid overlap between the two peer reviewers, and that the commission would rely on the Tetra Tech review of stormwater issues.
Well, just to add on to that we did include a review of what Tetra Tech had, their letter. And if there's additional review that the commission needs to do, then they will, because stormwater management standards is part of the Wetlands Protection Act. It's part of what they jurisdiction. So it's not completely taken out of their jurisdiction here.
Sure. Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Oh, Patrick, I think was going to just go through since he had a short list.
Yeah. Let me just start with this SW3. So I hear what you're saying. First of all, NRCS soil is a perfectly acceptable use of soil data via the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook for evaluating soils on site. Secondly, the test data that we performed was the test pits for where we were doing infiltration, which we wouldn't be doing infiltration within the areas of things like wetlands or anything like that, any other areas such as those which are more likely to be C and D soils. So it's very likely that the soils that we're seeing within the test pits are going to be more A and B type soils versus C and D type soils, because we wouldn't be placing infiltration ponds within those areas. Also, I just pulled up our stormwater soils report. The NRCS soil data states that we have around 300,000 square feet of A soil, 780,000 square feet of B soil, around 700,000 square feet of C soil, and 802,000 square feet of D soil. So it's a very wide mix of soils across the site, with the least significant being A. So it doesn't make any sense to go back in and change all the soils to the majority being A. It's just not good practice. The way we did it is the way it's done via the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook. We did the infiltration tests within the areas that are listed based on the procedure that is typically done for infiltration basins. Everything we've done has been peer reviewed by Tetra Tech, and they had no issues via their response. So we stand by the point on that. The second point is your testing and the method of testing. SW5, I believe. As I stated in SW3, directly from the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, when the static or simple dynamic method is proposed for sizing, I'm sorry. Wrong section. Oh, there we go. I was in the wrong section. The Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook states that dynamic field measure method suggested is the least conservative method for infiltration sizing. The method chosen is the most conservative one. So the likelihood that we would get a value that is actually higher than what we are using in our infiltration basins now is pretty likely, and there's built-in factor of safe use within the Rawls rate chart 233, I believe it is, in the Stormwater Handbook. So those are the tests that we chose and had the option of doing based on the basins that we have. So I believe those are the two items that I had to address.
We can take it from there unless there's questions, Mr. Chairman, or?
I'll keep going.
Okay. Leslie, if you could bring up the SW or WE1 rather. Here we go. Great. This I think we covered earlier. The WE1, Marty mentioned that Vernal Pool 3 they thought was underrepresented, and we accommodated that by just drawing a larger perimeter of that pond by several orders of magnitude, and that'll be reflected in future plans for review by the Commission and the ZBA. So I think that's a simple one. WE2 with regard to buffer zones between vernal pools or among the vernal pools. There'll be migration corridors between the three of the pools by way of removing of that residential building that Patrick mentioned by the railroad tracks. We've pulled out of this, so there's no development between Vernal Pool 1 and 2 along the railroad tracks. To Vernal Pool 3, there's a large contiguous area that's largely wetland or almost entirely wetland, and has a 14-foot box culvert, 5-foot by 14-foot box culvert connecting the two. So there will be patency between the three pools without any interruption in a linear manner. That there is going to be terrestrial impacts. There always is within 1,000 feet of vernal pool. You're having impacts. So, but we've made measures where the continuity will be retained between the three basins there. For WE3, We've complied with the applicable standards for vernal pools under 10.57 and 10.60 in the regulations. There's not a specific, let me see, make sure. We've evaluated the vernal pools independent of all this, and we're certainly happy to submit certification documents as a part of the order of conditions for the 3 basins. The data collected will be valid for a period of 3 years, which we hope to have an order long before that, so we can use certification documentation that we have in the can, so to speak, rather than have to go out and time it right in the future. That'll be valid. We have complied, as I said, with the performance standards for vernal pools. We don't have any activity within resource area within 100 horizontal feet of a vernal pool, which is the protective zone, the so-called vernal pool habitat. And just for the commissioner's benefits or a refresher, vernal pool habitat is considered 100-foot perimeter to vernal pools, in as much as that is also within an area regulated under the Act. And that would include BVW, riverfront area, bordering land subject to flooding or isolated land subject to flooding, and arguably land under water body or other resource areas. In this case, with respect to all 3 vernal pools, we've avoided any such alterations within areas that are protected as vernal pool habitat. It's also in this section, I think, is mention of a riverfront area alternative or assessment of impacts. As I said earlier in today's discussion, our impacts of vernal pool or to the riverfront area are now exclusively greater than 100 horizontal feet from the mean annual high water. They're under 10%, which is the threshold presumed below which you do not require a 1060 habitat assessment. And similarly, in compliance with the standards for stormwater placement in the riverfront area, we have avoided fencing or other barriers to wildlife migration associated with the basins that are in riverfront area. So there won't be any impediment to movement by large, macro wildlife across the landscape in the riverfront area, even after the construction of these basins. And again, now they're below the 10% threshold by a significant margin, which may actually shrink in the future upon refinement of the stormwater basin designs. WE4 is regards to overall site connectivity. We do have, as I said earlier, that vernal pool 1 and 2 will be connected in much the way they are now, at least along the parallel to the railroad tracks, and also vernal pool 3 by way of a forested wetland connectivity and the oversized openness compliant box culvert at crossing 1 there. There's not a particular, we've done the habitat assessments that are required under the Act for alteration of BVW, but we don't need to, or we don't need to specifically do habitat assessments with regard to the vernal pools, given our maintenance of adequate horizontal offsets to all 3 of these pools, in as much as they're that any work is within regulated resource area. Wetland 5, we hit regard to the details of the wetland replication plans. We were able to view the replication localities, the 4 localities, 1 with each or 2 with each of the crossings, both of those being to the north side of each crossing, or downstream, I guess you could say. At crossing 1 and 2, we've provided in the updated materials a planting plan, a schematic planting plan showing the details of at least ostensible placement of woody plantings within both or all 4 of the areas. We have enhanced, we had contours, or we had elevations before. We've filled in some of those gaps, and we will give you a kind of cut plan. We have cross-sectional plans already prepared in the original submittal. We can embellish that slightly with a little bit more detail, but essentially our plan remains the same there. To over excavate to 6 to 12 inches below the adjacent BVW in all aspects or in all instances. We'll field verify that with actual soil examinations there. So if we need to go deeper, or if we don't need to go deeper, we'll know that in the field based on the hydrology that's expressed by the soils. We'll backfill that over excavated pan in each of the 4 locations with a suitable non-contaminated with seeds, that is organic topsoil material. We'll plant into that the woody vegetation as specified, the tree and shrub specimens. And our hope is to, rather than fight an ongoing battle with weedy species, cattails, phragmites, and things of that nature, we want to mulch this as long as the seasonality works out in the temporality of this whole thing by locally collected leaf mulch. And if we put that on at a depth of about 6 inches, that'll stop a lot of the adventitious growth of weedy species, which I was actually, from where I am now, with about 150 feet that way, there's a recent replication that you can no longer see any of the planted specimens because it's all smartweed and barnyard grass and a bunch of other stuff that has overtaken it. And we'd like to avoid that in our efforts here. The default, though, however, would be to, if we can't accommodate that with native on-site leaf litter, then we're going to use two times the application rate for a wetland seed mix, a native wetland seed mix, such as the New England wetland plants or an equivalent there. We will embellish our plan slightly for the record and for Beta's understanding, but essentially nothing has changed dramatically since our original submittal. WE6, if we could. The wetland restoration, we deliberately did a 1.5 to 1 restoration plan to balance the any risk of being shy on our 1-to-1. It's always beneficial, I think, to embellish it a little bit. We didn't go to 2-to-1 because we'd be consuming additional upland to accommodate that. We could string these out further down. We'd be eating out more of the 25-foot buffer zone that we've gone to considerable lengths in the design to avoid through much of the project. So we don't think a 2-to-1 ratio is a solution to this issue. Marty mentioned additional buffer zone protections, which we are somewhat hamstrung here with the, we've already kind of consolidated to avoid riverfront area impacts and retracted from there. We've made our building density, or at least the verticality of the multifamilies has increased, and so we really don't have a lot of options left to provide meaningful buffer zone. And buffer zone, to be a meaningful resource or attribute, really needs to be substantial in terms of ecosystem stability. The 25-foot is certainly greater than is required under the Act. There's no specification for buffer zone thresholds under the Wetlands Protection Act itself, and we've respected that throughout and exceeded it in many areas. We've also pulled back, somewhat related to this, greater than 50 feet from the Vernal Pools at along the railroad track, Vernal Pools 1 and 2, which previously had a building bisecting them, and now we're maintaining a 50-foot minimum horizontal offset to both of those pools with any disturbance, regardless of requirements under the Act for that. I think our next would be WE7. Let me just. Oh, I think we do have our 25-foot boundary shown. This is I'm sorry, I should paraphrase it for the commissioner's benefit. No disturb 25-foot zone. We do show throughout, I believe, on our current set of plans, and I believe it was on the initial set, the middle. I think Marty also mentioned that the replication areas should have buffer zones associated with them. And that's not, although it would be nice to do that, it's not a requirement of the Wetlands Protection Act regulations or the performance standards for replication of bordering vegetated wetland. The performance standards call for replication of the resource area in proximity and at a similar elevation to the impacted area, which we've accomplished with all 4 of these locations. And that's part of the reason the specific geography and geometry was chosen so that we didn't avoid that requirement for similar elevation and similar locality on the site or in the sub drainage there. WE9, actually, I think Marty might have skipped over WE8, so if I can read that really quickly. I didn't want to interrupt her when she was in the zone there. Essentially, I think we comply with that for the most part. Most of our 25-foot no disturb zone will be, with very, very few exceptions, will be in its native state, in its natural state, and won't be fertilized or otherwise manipulated. Marty went on to 9, wetland WE9. Invasive control plan for the site. It's not even inferred requirement of the Wetlands Protection Act to do invasive species control. That might be a shortcoming in some, at least in some wetland context, but certainly in the terrestrial environment, there's no requirement. And we think it would be pretty ambitious and pretty wrought with failure. And I'm sorry. And there we go. To try to undertake, this was an old pig farm. Old farms, and particularly pig farms and things that had diverse uses, have a litany and a list of invasives that's long and pervasiveness that's significant and widespread. And we don't think that trying to control those in the post-development condition is typically required in other projects or warranted or really a viable undertaking. So we don't think that's something that the Act requires by any means. And on to WE10. Request for graphic of wetlands pre and post, wetland, I guess, watersheds pre and post. I know that Pat and Patrick may be able to help me out here. We've examined the pre and post for the vernal pools along the railroad track, particularly because those were limited watersheds. And I remember early on in this process, before these comments came in, that we made measures so that the recharge or the distribution to those resources would be similar or identical or more than the existing conditions there. Other than that, I don't think that's a specific requirement. We try to be sensitive to the hydrology of those areas. Beyond that, we don't. I don't think we have watershed or groundwater modeling throughout the site, which is not a typical requirement under the Wetlands Protection Act. And WE10 and I think maybe not under a specific comment of betas, but I do have here just a notation that alternatives to the riverfront area, use of any riverfront area. We provided an alternatives analysis with the initial submittal, in which we proffered the preferred alternative, if you will, which was the old stormwater design with a minimal other ancillary activities in the outer riparian zone. Since that, we've come up with a even fourth alternative, I guess, if you will, and that's our currently preferred riverfront alteration scheme that was reduced in response to the comments of the peer review, so that, as I said earlier, we're well under our 10% threshold. We're exclusive to the outer riparian zone. We have no barriers to wildlife or animal movement associated with the stormwater facility. So that we believe that these basins, as currently proto-designed, if you will, are entirely compliant with the performance standards for 10.58. And I don't think that's all I have on my notes that I took while Marty was speaking in terms of responses to the August 11th peer review.
Okay. We'll go through the commission now. There's been a lot presented here. So you have any specific questions from what you have heard? Speak up at this point. So Bailey? Any comments or questions?
Yes, Commissioner, sir, thank you. That was a lot. Thank you so much for going through that. Really appreciate everybody's, attention to all of this. And I don't know if this is outside of our questioning ability, but when I see the curve in the road, thank you for whoever is presenting, I appreciate this, that goes from, I guess, the single families onto like the multi-families, where Basin, I think it was 1, 2, 3, maybe. Yes, that one.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much, Patrick. Is it, are we protecting something on the inside where we couldn't make that even like smaller to give more boundary on the riverfront? And
Yeah, that's wetland C there.
the inside is the wetlands. Okay.
Yeah, it's wrapping around a wetland, and then it goes to the drive under for building 2.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, and it's
Hammerhead, we stood there. I think the flags are like 36, C36 and 337. There's a little cart road through there.
Mhm.
And so that's the loop road that you're mentioning there is just north of there. And the reason for its placement in there is to avoid the little hammerhead feature of Wetland C there, as Patrick said.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. One more question. Back to, I believe it was WE9, the invasive species. It was one of our more recent ones. I'd love you to reconsider trying to do some kind of maintenance along the riverfront property. I know it's not, I guess, a requirement, but any property that borders, a riverfront where things could get into the river, go over the river, and then get spread even further, or property boundaries with abutters where they might not be able to help maintain because it's kind of on your property. I'd encourage that. Thank you. That's all.
Doug?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay. Emilio?
Yeah, I also had a comment about the invasive species control plan. We've asked other applicants to control invasive species, and I would also encourage the applicant to consider that as well. Beyond that, that's my only question right now. Comment.
Okay. Betsy?
Okay, I think I have 3 questions. The first one actually is about invasive species, but I want to get someone to either use the red pencil or the stamping device to show us on the plan where you are anticipating, because it's not all invasive species. We saw some nice upland hemlock forests. So can someone use the pencil feature to show us where all the invasives are going to be left? I'm just curious to see how close they're going to be to basins, how close they're going to be to restoration areas, how close they're going to be to anything.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, much of the invasives, the worst infestations are the old pastures.
Can you use the red pencil just to and also not everyone was on the site visit.
Right.
Doug and Emilio weren't there. So
we have
what's going to look like? I mean, we went through some pretty nasty invasives. Doug, you should have been there. Wow. And Emilio too. But can you just show us what's going to end up looking like that?
Whoops. Let me see if I can grab this. One of our the most noxious. Whoops, it's not drawing for me. I'm sorry. Let me try one more attempt here. This area here is one of the old pastures.
So you're pointing to some buildings.
Yeah, so this is upland that's going to be consumed by the project. Yeah. Much of the wetland resource areas, the hummocks and whatnot, have a lot of Japanese barberry, European buckthorn. Those are probably the highest occurrence. There's not a lot of other diversity. Some euonymus, I think, is out there
But your red line is circling a bunch of buildings.
Right, that's
Where's
the
the place-
path that we walked through that was the most infested, or at least one of them. And there was
So
another-
all those are going out. I mean, you're not going to have that be the lawns of people, right?
Right, that'll be gone. It'll be within the project footprint.
So where are the invasives that are not going to be gone? Where are they concentrated?
The concentrations are really in the remaining wetlands and buffer zone. I'm just going to as an example, here,
Yeah.
there's quite a bit of invasive in this area, intermixed with native wetland plants. And so, to control things like that, you'd have to do an awful lot of work, herbicide application in resource areas, which is pretty ambitious and somewhat obtrusive. The riverfront area, as you commented, is a lot less because it wasn't utilized as heavily for farming and whatnot back in the day. And so the hemlock grove that you mentioned is kind of along this area. That's a pretty intact environment. There are some buckthorn and some honeysuckle in there, but overall it's a much less lower occurrence in that area than in the areas that were formerly pig farm.
All right, so I think I'm the third commissioner to ask you to reconsider that, because those invasives were just a little over the top. I mean, we've been to some pretty unpleasant areas, but that was pretty tough. Second question is, maybe you will try to do exactly the letter of the law and whatever is minimum, but if you don't have a 25-foot buffer, at least around a restoration area, it's possible that restoration area is going to fail, that it won't be a successful restoration area. So that's something, again, that I would like you to consider, that ultimately we want the restoration areas to be functional, to actually work. You've got 4 of them, I think. And then finally, I don't think Marta mentioned the second wetland crossing at all. Did you, Marta?
No, I didn't talk about the crossings at all, as a matter of fact.
Okay, well.
Yeah, I think based on our site inspection on Saturday, in our next set of comments, we're going to talk a little bit more about the crossings. They were staked out so everyone could see it. We could, you could see the extent of the proposed impacts in the box culvert structure. As well as the mitigation areas. We saw those areas. So we're going to provide further comment on those project elements.
Well, would one of the comments be that it would have to be extraordinary permission to have that second crossing? And I would just sort of say that, having walked all over the 55-acre site, you've got a lot of houses you're getting with one crossing. Right at the moment, I'm not especially excited about a second crossing happening. I can see a lot of advantages from our point of view as conservation commissioners to not having the second crossing. And I think we're allowed to say that. So those are my comments.
Thanks, Betsy. I have some couple of comments. One that Betsy just addressed was wanted to bring up the second crossing as well. And I think we'll wait for any additional comments on that till we get Beta's input on that. One other thing, and I understand and I know that this is a bylaw issue, but on any other project, we require that plaques be shown to keep people out of the wetland areas so that they designate the plaque. We have a standard statement to put on them that basically tells people that this is a resource area and they're not to be doing any work activity like putting debris, lawn clippings, etc., doing any removal of trees or what have you. I understand this is a homeowners association. But I just thought I would toss this out at this point. If you were going to consider the plaques, which we will bring up to the zoning board in our comments, that you may want to start thinking about it now as far as locating them on the plans. So just putting that out for your thought and consideration at this point. So right now, if there's anyone in the audience, if you
I just
can.
add a couple things before you go to the audience.
Oh, go ahead, Landis.
Landis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add, and I appreciate the comments back from the applicant on the beta letter. I think there's a couple of items that still need to be hashed out. One being the replication area that Marta had brought up, the DP replication checklist, and there should be a lot more detail on the replication area so that it can be a successful replication area. So I would also say go to the DP guidance on replication areas and checklist and address some of the issues that are there. I would also just like to echo the beta report that as far as the detention basins in the riverfront area, that the burden of proof is that there's no practical alternatives to citing structural stormwater management measures in the riverfront area. So if there's any way to look at your design again and see if you can reduce the basins, impervious pavements, more micro basins. I think there's a couple other things that could be looked at to potentially reduce the footprint of the basins in the riverfront area. And the details, again, I also mentioned that it was a little hard to look at them because they weren't on the plan that was provided with the additional information. They weren't numbered on the larger site plan, and it's hard to go figure out where they were. So there's obviously other things, but those were the main points that I wanted to just highlight based on Beta's report and the response back from the applicant. And while Betsy was talking, I was also thinking, well, if there are a lot of areas that the invasive species are going to be removed for the development, that if you could provide us where that's going to go, where the invasive species material is going to go during excavation, and how it's going to not be spread further throughout the site.
Okay. Anything else then, Landis?
That's it for now.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Okay, good.
Mr. Chairman, can I just respond quickly just to one point? I just wanted to clarify that this, with regard to alternatives, the statute, Landis mentioned no practical alternatives. The statute actually requires no practicable and substantially equivalent economic alternatives. So that's what we need to look at, not whether there are any practical alternatives, but whether there are any practical and substantially equivalent economic alternatives. Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Okay, so anyone in the audience, if you would.
I have a question for Joanna about that, because this is a question that I think I have pretty much every year I've been a commissioner, and I'll probably, continue on with this question. So if you, so it's probably a rhetorical question, okay, Joanna, but so if you start off saying, I want to make $1 million off of this site, and then sort of that's your starting point, and then you've got to put everything every which way to make it happen. And then we say, we've got to see an alternative. And if you say, well, no, we've got to make $1 million off the site. So that's it, where there is no alternative. I can never quite figure out that particular trade-off. We're the Conservation Commission. We're not trying to figure out how to make it $1 million site. We're trying to make it a site that's safe for our wetlands. That's really our purview. That's a rhetorical question, right? Or can you try to answer it?
Well, no, it's a good question. And I think that's what the statute is trying to balance, is the purpose of the statute, which is to protect the wetlands against the economic realities of development. And I think I don't think when you talk about economic, practical alternatives, it's not about so much the profit, but it's about the cost of those alternatives. So what does alternative A cost versus alternative B? And the statute does have additional explanation of that. And it says an alternative is practicable and substantially economically equivalent if it is available and capable of being done after taking into consideration costs and whether such costs are reasonable or prohibitive to the owner, existing technology, the proposed use, and logistics in light of the overall project purposes.
Yeah, except I've never seen any developer give us and I don't think I want to see the spreadsheet, but just again, I've never seen anyone show us the spreadsheet. Here's what it will cost here, here's what will cost there, here's what we've cost out here. It's just like, we got to take your word for it. It's sort of like, yep, can't do it. Yeah, that seems to be the way the law is written, that you don't actually have to show us the various costs so that we can weigh them.
It's not required. I'm sure if there's, as you know, it's expensive to put together a specific proposal. So the act wouldn't require the applicant go out and bid, 3 different jobs. But, if you wanted some costing, I think, that's something that we could talk about, but it's, I think the point with the alternatives analysis is, again, that the act is trying to balance the interests of the wetlands, of protecting the wetlands against, the purpose of the Wetlands Protection Act is not to frustrate development. And so, it's really supposed to be a balance between, a reasonable development and protecting the wetlands. And I think, that's, what this process bears out.
Okay, Betsy?
Yes, thank you.
At this point? Okay. All right. Do we have anybody from the audience who would like to speak? We ask that keep your comments or questions related to conservation issues. We had anybody tune in, Landis?
If there is no one, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to I could answer to a couple of the comments that were just put out there by some of the members, but I'll wait until we clear the decks of any abutters or interested parties.
Landis, you're on mute.
If there are any abutters that are having trouble communicating with us, you can put it in chat that you want to speak, or you can unmute yourself and let us know.
Landis, did you have abutters contacting you this week saying that they wanted to be at the meeting?
I passed on the correct Zoom information to a couple of abutters that have been interested all along.
So I'm concerned that they're not here.
Well, I'm not saying that they're not here, but
Okay.
someone may not want to talk, and that's their right.
Okay.
So you can raise your hand or you can put in chat. Wait, there's someone in chat.
Somebody there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if
Your
you want
name,
to,
yeah, your name and address, please. Is that Erica, was it?
okay, so this particular abutter knows how to unmute themselves, but they are not prepared to speak tonight. So.
Okay, the screen, everybody see the screen? They're gonna email Landis, I guess, with some questions or comments. Okay.
Right, yeah. So they can just unmute themselves if they want to speak.
Okay.
or let me know in the chat.
Yeah. Is there anyone else? Okay, if you do, you can come in later, but was that, Brian, did you want to say something else?
Just, yeah, a couple of the points brought up by commissioners, Mr. Chairman. One being kind of demarcation or placards separating the development areas from the conserved or wetland areas, buffer zones. We're willing to certainly monument some of the material. We don't think it's necessary to do on a unit by unit basis because simply, unlike a normal residential or, single family residential where everybody's mowing their own lawn, putting their Christmas trees in the wetlands and, expanding their backyards for a, soccer practice area or a swimming pool or whatever it is. This will be all under the control of the association, and the maintenance of the landscaping and plowing and so forth will all be done in a unified manner. But that being said, we could certainly think of a plan for a monumentation, some discrete, but hopefully efficacious announcements that, on this side of the signage line is a sensitive area that's not to be abused or otherwise impacted after the completion of the project. But like I said, the majority of landscape work, mowing, maintenance, and plowing and all that stuff is going to be done in a unified manner, which will avoid some of the opportunities of single ownership where everybody does whatever they want.
Do you know whether this would be a separate landscaping company that would be hired by the association, or would it be an organization, a group that is part of the homeowners organization?
I'd ask David perhaps an opinion on that, since you know much more about that.
Sure. Yeah, so the homeowners association will hire a landscape company that will do the work under, probably an annual contract.
Okay. All right. So that's, I would then expect as part of the operation and maintenance manual that there would be something in there that explains to the landscape company what is and is not, basically what they should be doing along the site with respect to snow removal, the disposal of their grass clippings or whatever else is there, so that this would be part of the operation maintenance manual. Is that what in your plan or in the manual?
Yes, it will be in the manual, and it will be part of the contract with the landscape company going forward.
Okay, all right. But if you think that there's some areas that you would agree to put some recognition of the areas and the sensitivity, et cetera, the standard flags, I think that would be beneficial. And I understand that it's part of the bylaw. It's not part of the Wetlands Protection Act. So if you could, wherever you would do that, would certainly be helpful. I think that we pointed out that everybody gets knowledge of that. It is a resource area that should be protected.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yes.
Last thing on the response to the comments, Mr. Chairman, I think one or two members had said that the second crossing should be dispatched with, and there's really not an express prohibition against that. We've gone to considerable lengths to constrain the impacts to under 5,000 square feet. So we didn't put ourselves in a limited project configuration. We went through many iterations, layouts, and so forth, so that we could make these roads cross at the narrowest points of both of the resource areas, which, as you've seen, have been pretty beat up. At least the second crossing is entirely a manipulated environment in its current condition. So we don't agree that one of these crossings should be eliminated from the project design.
Okay. We'll continue the hearing.
Landis is trying to talk, but she's muted. Unmute, Landis.
Landis.
Okay, I'm muted, yes. Marty, if I was just reading the Act 10.58 for, if you in your next report could just address the difference between 10.58 for C, practical and sustainable equivalent economic alternatives, and D, no significant adverse impacts, because that economic portion, it seems to be different between those two sections. So,
Sure.
and no significant adverse impacts actually specifically addresses the stormwater structures within the riverfront area. So,
Right.
I think we need some clarification there.
Sure. And on our first set of comments, we really didn't concentrate and focus on their alternatives analysis because, because they weren't quantifying any impacts to riverfront area because there were stormwater basins. So this next go around, since they're now coming in with, less than the 10% argument, then we'll take a look at that closer this time around.
Okay. Because I'm just reading practical alternative. I don't see the word economic in that particular section. So I just want some verification on that.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else? All right, we'll continue this until the October 28th. Now, where's the schedule? Where is it? What do they do with this agenda?
Mr. Chair, I was wondering if, I know that the commission at the onsite, we're talking about the applicant staking out the limit of work, or at least the center line of the roadway
Okay.
in the field. I don't know if you've had any more thoughts on that.
And the limit of the basins.
Limit of the basins, right? Because we're gonna go take another look at things, this new plan.
Okay, is that to the applicant? Is that something you can do?
I don't see why that is required. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It would be helpful.
I think in the field, I know for me, it was difficult to see where the limit of the riverfront area and the proposed work, because the applicant really didn't have a full command of that either. So, it was the applicant's on-site to present the project, and it really was, I left there still a little, unsure of things, so.
We spent 4 hours out there.
Oh, yeah, 4 hours. I think it's, I understand where it's coming from. It's difficult when you're out there looking at a tree to know where you are relative to everything else that you're showing on the plan. Now, is there some, okay, we got the basins are an issue. Marty?
Yeah, yes, I think the limit of the basins, and that would include the grading associated with the basins, not just the bottom of the basins. And then the plans that we were looking at in the field were showing a limit of clearing that really, so I think the limit of work is important, especially along the riverfront area. And it's always nice to have the road staked out when you're out there.
Sorry everyone, this is Katie Unright with Howard Stein Hudson. I'm also one of the project engineers, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So if there's more specific, there's certainly thousands of feet of road out here. Not all are within the buffer zone. If there's some more specific areas that we could maybe point out on an additional site walk, or certainly there's topography and site features too that we can reference when we're out there. without having a survey crew lay out the project where there's still some items in flux. Would certainly be happy to do that if there's some more specific areas you would like to see.
Okay. Just trying to look at this. I think it would be helpful from a valuation standpoint to stake out and agree, you know, the riverfront area is an important area, and there's some issues that we have with that. If we had trying to say, how much of the basin would need to be identified besides basically the center of the basin? Marty?
It would really be the limited clearing and grading associated with basins.
Okay.
Is there something specific? I know that we're talking about, you know, certainly this is a big site. This is a 50-acre site, and it is difficult to get around in there with the wetland flags and such to kind of figure out where you are. But is there something specific that you're looking for relative to the riverfront area besides just proximity? I mean, I think we can get you pretty close, certainly in the field on a site walk without having, you know, actual survey stakes to the square inch of kind of where these things are going to go, to have a discussion about the different impacts to the riverfront area and what the concerns are, certainly of the peer review engineer and of the commission. I guess I'm looking for something that might be in the middle instead of having a survey crew go out there for weeks, possibly because of underbrush, et cetera, to lay out exact center lines of roads, et cetera.
Well, if I can make comment, out near the basin, I forget what basin it was. It was the first basin along the riverfront that we looked at. I think maybe Pond 1, maybe that's what it is. I mean, there was a survey traverse point right there. So it would be fairly easy for a surveyor to go out there and set up right over that at that point and shoot some shots and pound in some stakes. It wouldn't take that long at all. It's
So,
not a week's thing.
Right. No, I just want to limit, and that's the thing is I just want to limit from being a broad-based staking of center lines to, you know, we need a couple of approximate stakes in this location just to kind of get our bearings. You know, certainly we have access to GPS. We could go out there and do something like that, which will get us in the general vicinity without having to have a survey crew go out. So that's
Yep.
That would be
you could do
appropriate.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
I'm not sure GPS would work all that great in that overstory back there, but you know, probably would.
The only thing I can say, we'll have to make some assumptions, and they may, I'm sure we'd have to be, in our evaluation, be on the conservative side. So, and then conclusions that would come from that. So I don't know.
So what specifically? I mean, you want which basins?
Well, it'd be the basins that are proposing impacts to riverfront.
They're looking at, I'm going to draw on here, right about there, here, and here, just generally.
We have, how many basins do we have in that riverfront?
There's these three here.
Show it again.
Yep, sure. You know what? I'll change the color to make it, see if this makes it a little bit easier. Basically right in this location here, in this location here, and over here. Those are the areas that are left on this alternative plan that go into the riverfront area. So if we set, you know, a stake generally back here, or with GPS, we're to mark out here, here, and here, would that be adequate for the review?
One stake?
Well, we can, that one stake, we can work with the existing topography in those areas, or we can we can set 3. Let me go back to my annotation. You know, if maybe we did 1 in the middle and 1 on the ends. Like that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can see between.
Would that be helpful, Marty?
Sure.
Okay. So when can that be done?
So can I just clarify? So you're gonna put stakes, I think it's 3, 4, and 5. So you're going to put stakes outlining the extent of the basins.
Right, we're gonna look
in the riverfront area.
This here, here, and here. And then this is right adjacent to this, so here, and then 2 over here.
Okay, and I think partially is the point to get an understanding out in the field, the extent of the basins within the riverfront area. So we would need to know where the riverfront area is in relation to these stakes that are outlining the limit of work.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to figure out in the field. Where's the riverfront? How much of it is in the, I mean, it's easy to just deal with square footages, but when you go out in the field, you actually deal with what's out there. And if there's something out there that it doesn't make sense to alter, where it may make sense to alter somewhere else. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So
we could kind of, I think we could, Landis, I think we could also look at just the corresponding stake to make the stake at the edge of the basin and the corresponding stake to the riverfront area adjacent to it, so that you can see the distance of how far we're actually within the riverfront. Does that make sense?
I think that's was my understanding when we were out there, Marta, is that your intent also to figure out exactly what area the riverfront area will be altered.
Right. And I think like the 2 stakes, you know, in that one basin at the bottom there. I mean, when you're in the field, you may or may not see, I mean, that's quite a distance there. I mean, if they're out there setting stakes with a GPS unit, there's no reason they can't put a few more stakes along the limit of the basin, so it defines it a little bit better. So it's just a little easier to understand when you're out there.
Sure. Nope, I agree. And we can definitely do that.
Okay, so now when do you think you can have that done?
The better question is, when can a walk be arranged? And we'll make sure it's done ahead of time.
Say that again?
I really prefer it be done, and then we'll schedule the walk.
Okay, so you'll let us know when that's done?
Katie, is there any reason that we can't just go out there and get that done very quickly?
No, I think we should be able to do that within the week.
So I don't
Right,
see
so
why.
You can let me know when it'll be done, and I'll coordinate when Marta can go out and take a look at it.
Say 2 weeks, David, and then we can schedule.
Is that Mark?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll be done and we'll have it done in 2 weeks, no matter what. So we can schedule now.
I don't know if the commission would like to be on this.
Yeah, if we do that, it would have to be a Saturday.
Remind me why it has to be a Saturday, Jack?
Well,
Because why does it have to be a Saturday?
if the commission's gonna go, we
Okay,
have,
the entire commission didn't go last time, so if
Well, I know.
you really
Well,
are
that's-
gonna do another site walk, I wanna go around the room and have people actually look at their schedule. Like Doug, are you available on Saturdays? Emilio, are you available on Saturdays? That kind of thing.
Can I also, Jack, can I just intervene here just a moment? I just want to reiterate also that the intent is to minimize the impact to the riverfront area. So if the applicant feels like they can go back and look at their project and with the intent of minimizing the basins, that perhaps they should do that first.
This is our plan. I want to make that clear. You know, we've worked really, really hard to minimize the impact. You know, the imperative here is to build affordable housing.
I understand that.
And
so you've looked at impervious surface, you've looked at smaller basins throughout the site. You've looked, I mean, you've looked at alternatives like that.
So we've looked at the alternatives that we think we're required to look at.
Well,
and we.
That's not the level that you should be looking at. Okay, so fine, if you want to go move forward.
The point is, we're trying to work with you and get some things resolved. If there's,
I appreciate that.
Ways of doing things. You know, if you want to take the approach that this is it, then we'll work from that.
Yeah, I think that's
up to you.
I think that is the approach that we should take. I do believe that how we've drawn these basins have been drawn is conservative, and that they will be somewhat smaller when all of the stormwater engineering is complete. And I'm not saying that we won't try and look at tweaks, but the basic plan is the plan at this point. You know, we're a long way into this from when we originally applied, and we've made a bunch of changes in response to comments. We're doing things that are really not required by the Act. For instance, you know, removing the housing between vernal pools 1 and 2, not required by the Act. And we're very respectful of your charge, but we also need to come to some conclusion, and we need to be able to build affordable housing according to while still complying with the Wetlands Protection Act. So I think we can do as you ask and put some stakes out there. It'll be done in 2 weeks or less, and let's see if we can get a date.
Yeah, we'll have it done by the 2nd of October.
You say you'll have it done by October 2nd?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. As far as a site visit is concerned,
Jack, can I clarify? I mean, Marta's going out for another look once the stakes are in place to see the extent of the riverfront and you know where the basins are. So are we talking about a date for Marta to go out and see that, or are we talking about the entire commission going out again to see that?
I think it would be certainly beneficial to have Marty with the commission. So it's a question of, do you need to do anything on your own first, or would it be beneficial if the commission was along while you did your observation?
I could do this concurrently with the commission. We'd look at that area, and at the same time, I would look at the other areas that I would want to look at. So it would just be one trip.
Okay, so I think basically then the commission should be with you. That's what you're saying?
It's completely up to the commission. I can go out there and collect the data and the information, take photographs and describe it to the commission at the meeting, if that's easier for you. I just, thought maybe if you wanted to go out and look at yourself, I could go out there with you. It's really up to you.
I feel strongly that if we actually do make another date to go out there, that we really do find out whether it's a date that's compatible for everybody, because I don't think it's gonna, either everyone should see it or Marta, you can come and report back, because 3 of us have been all over the site. So what's the day? We don't have a date yet, but once we have it, we gotta actually have quite a few people be okay with that date. I think that's the challenge.
I think it is more, in this situation, it is beneficial for us to be in the field and with, preferably, I think, with Marty. Now, is that in your scope at this point, that you can go out yourself and then come back with a commission?
No, it's not. Landis and I talked about us getting the commission an amendment, a scope amendment to include some additional services. So it's actually, it's drafted. I just have to look at it. So at this point, it'd be best and most economical if, I went out there once, if the commission was going out there, then I could do everything I need to do that one trip. So.
With the commission. One trip with the commission.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Okay, so let's go and see who can, all right. What days, I guess, is there anybody who can't make it during the week? Bailey?
Sorry, I'm mute. Not the best. It would literally depend on the day. I have a 9 to 5 job.
Okay, and it's difficult starting at 5 o'clock now because it's dark by 6:30 or whatever. So that's not, so basically you're looking at a Saturday. Doug?
I have some personal family health concerns going on right now, so I'm day by day. I can't commit specifically right now.
Good. Emilio?
Yeah, excuse me, weekends only work for me.
Okay. So basically we're looking at Saturday. Now, Marty, is that work for you? Is that a problem?
It's not a problem. I'm looking at my calendar. The only Saturday that I couldn't make it would be the 10th. That would be Columbus Day weekend.
So, somebody from the applicant said they could have it done by the 2nd. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so what about the 3rd? Does that work for everybody? Let's go through. Marty, that's okay for you?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, Landis?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, Bailey?
Should be good.
Okay, Doug, and I understand depends on what's going on.
Yep.
Emilio?
I believe so.
October 3rd, okay. Betsy?
Yep.
Okay. And it's okay with me. So we'll plan October 3rd.
I have a request of whoever leads the way now that I've been out there. If we're going out to see the basins at the riverfront, let's not make it quite so treacherous if we possibly can. I felt that we were pretty close to spraining some ankles out there. So if there's any chance that somebody in the know knows a really great way to get out to those basins. Personally, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. So 9 o'clock on the 3rd, does that work?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that the applicant is available that day, especially given Betsy's request. It sounds like Brian
Yes.
Butler. David, can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, so we are available. Brian Butler is not available, but one of his colleagues will take his position, and
We could take it the easy way.
Yeah.
It's a longer way, but it'll be the easier way.
yeah, and we can go, directly there on the last site walk. The objective was to see a lot of other stuff on the site, so we'll be more direct.
Okay, so October 3rd at 9 o'clock at the site. But,
Terrific.
okay, good enough. And so then we'll continue this until the October 28th. So let me see, do we have anything else on the 28th?
Yep.
Starlight Drive.
Wait a minute. There's something else. Yeah, there's a second hearing after Starlight Drive. So if we could make it at like 7:15.
Okay, so 7:15 on October 28th. Someone make that a motion?
I'll move it.
You got a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Bailey? Bailey still there?
Yes, sorry,
This is, oh, okay, aye, good. Doug,
Aye.
Medium,
Aye.
Betsy,
Aye.
and Jack, aye. Okay, so it's continued to October 28th at 7:15 PM. So we will see you on October 3rd and then on the 28th.
Mr. Chairman, if I might,
Yes.
just regarding the 28th, the applicant will be working on and the engineering plan to go along with the revised plan that was previously submitted. David, will that plan be available by the 28th?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, we're going to need that 2 weeks in advance of the hearing, so we can review and comment on it.
So
Probably doable.
Okay,
At this point, the stormwater, the new stormwater design has not been designed yet, so we haven't looked at it.
Yeah, we're very confident that the stormwater will work. And I believe it will be done, and we'll be able to submit it 2 weeks in advance.
okay, so we're all, everybody's happy with the site visit on the 3rd and the meeting on the 28th?
Mhm.
Okay. Good enough. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
And we still have some more, we have another hearing. Okay. Landis, let's see.
Yeah.
What do we got? Palmer Avenue?
Okay, Town of Walpole Notice of Intent, Conservation Commission, public hearing in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, Wetlands Protection Act, and the Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Notice is hereby given of the intent of Michael Brait to restore altered wetlands and install a path and dock to Willett Pond at 3 Palmer Road within 100 feet of bordering vegetated wetlands. Plans are on file with the Conservation Commission. The public hearing on the above matter will be held at Walpole Town Hall or via virtual accessible video on September 23rd, 2020, beginning at 7:30. All interested parties are requested to be present. John Wiley, Chairman.
Okay, we've got an issue here that the owner of the property is the Ponce River Land Holding. Is that, we got the right name?
Yes,
That they have not signed the application.
that's correct.
So we will not do anything further with the hearing. And we will, at this point, I guess we'll continue it until, what do we got next week? The next meeting is October 14th.
Yeah, we kind of have a lot on the 14th. I was suggested continuing it to the 28th.
Okay.
Really, their directive was to put together a restoration plan first and get that going under the enforcement order. And then if they wanted to submit a notice of intent to change the path on the dock, to submit it afterwards. They sort of jumped the gun. So I think they should go on the 28th
Okay.
or
Let's
further.
make. So you, no, they were supposed to do a restoration plan with your input, is that right? Or with your review?
With my review and then the review of the owners of the property, the Neponset River Land Holdings Association, because
That
the
hasn't
majority of
happened
the
yet.
alteration is on their property. And they had
And that
not
has-
received any copy.
And that has not happened.
Correct.
All right,
So you could even put them on November
I would say,
3rd. November 4th.
at this point, as far as you know, have they done any restoration work?
No,
It's getting a little late in the season to be doing restoration. All right, let's, the next meeting after that was November 4th, wasn't it?
yes, correct.
So why don't we schedule this for November 4th?
I think that makes sense.
Okay. I will make this November 4th is Palmer Avenue. So why don't we do that at 7?
Okay,
Okay. All right. Someone make that a motion.
I'll move it.
We got a second? And that was Emilio. Good, thank you. Okay, all in favor, Bailey,
Aye.
Doug,
Aye.
Emilio,
Aye.
Betsy,
Aye.
Jack, aye. Okay, so that takes care of that one. We've got some other things to clear up here. We still don't have minutes, is that right, Landis?
we still don't have minutes.
Yeah, okay. Enforcement orders, anything new?
There's nothing new on the enforcement orders at this point.
Okay. Let's see, what else we got here? There was a
Certificate of compliance,
certificate.
42
Is
Sawmill Road.
that
Those for
ready?
a pool. Yes, you can issue
Okay,
it.
So, okay, someone move that?
I'll move it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Bailey,
Aye.
Doug,
Aye.
Medio,
Aye.
Betsy,
Aye.
Jack, aye. Okay, so that's done. Anything else? Board comments, we had Elm Street, is there anything,
Yeah, I
else
just,
on that?
there's no, there's a wetlands, sort of near that property, but it's way back from where the, addition is going, so. It's okay. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, so we're done?
Yeah, and so on the next agenda, also on the 14th, so we have some hearings. I'm also putting on the agenda the Allen Pond Dam, which Carl Baldoff, the town engineer, has been working on the alternatives plan for that with the federal organization that's putting together those alternatives, and he just wanted to run them by you guys just to see if anything jumped out as, no, that looks horrible or that looks okay. These are different scenarios with fixing the dam structure. So just let you know, that'll be on our next agenda as well.
Okay,
And I'm going to send you information about that beforehand.
okay. All right, anybody have anything else? Okay, someone make a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
I will
Anybody
second it.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, sounds good. We're done. Thank
Okay.
you all.